Hello friends, welcome to what is not actually my second video for this month. Usually I have, if you've never seen me before, usually I have a reading wrap up and then I do some kind of other video for the month. This is actually a bonus third video because it is just something that I want to talk about, but it's pretty short. This is probably going to be a pretty short video. And it's just starting a discussion and kind of inserting my voice into it. If you are someone who likes to listen to bookish opinions, or if you want to give me your bookish opinion about this topic, I would love to hear it. My name is Nova, and this is Off My Rocker Reading. So if you know me and my channel at all, then you know that I really love memoirs. For anyone who doesn't know that, just kind of a little backstory. I was in a colloquium in college where we literally just read prominent memoirs for an entire year and discussed them and kind of academically talked about them and went into them. And because of that class, I just love memoirs. I think memoirs are such a special genre of book, and I'm a really big fan. I read multiple memoirs a year. I think that it's just such a great chance to put yourself in the position to intimately learn about another person. And I think it's very brave to write a memoir and to share your story or something difficult that you've been through. So that being said, I read what was for me a very anticipated memoir for this year. And that was Anna Marie Tendler's new memoir, which is called Men Have Called Her Crazy. If you don't know who that is, I hate to open it up this way, but the thing that I think more people might know her from, rather than it being her art or her photography, is the fact that she was married to John Mulaney. Any mention of him is really not in this book at all. We're going to talk about that later though. I've actually followed her on social media for a few years and was not only intrigued by the prospect of learning more about her, but I was also just really interested in the angle that she was taking for this memoir. As you might have guessed from the title, Men Have Called Her Crazy, it's about the way that her experiences with men have shaped her life and shaped her mental health. It's about a lot more than that, but that is kind of the overarching theme of the memoir. And I want to give you some of my personal thoughts about it before we get into the stuff I want to talk about. Because for me, this was actually probably my favorite memoir that I've read this year. I would have to go back and look to make sure that that is actually true. But I found this to be very compelling, partially because I found it extremely relatable. A big part of this book is her mental health journey and the time that she spent in a psychiatric facility. And her experience with anxiety was just very, very relatable to me. She seems to struggle with and have a lot of similar thought patterns that I feel like I experience in my own life because of my anxiety. I also just really resonated with her opinion of men and her experiences with men and why they've caused her to view them so negatively. I feel like I have a very parallel experience to a lot of the things that she talks about in this book. And a big part of it is also actually her relationship with her dog and detailing the end of her dog's life. And that actually had me crying like a baby. I have my own dog that is like my child. And I'm very, very sensitive. Ever since rescuing her, I'm very, very sensitive to just the idea of someday losing her. So all that being said, I just found this very, very relatable. And I felt like it hit a lot of emotional beats that if you relate to it, it's gonna kind of hit you hard, you know? But I do want to highlight that there are things about her life that I don't find very relatable. Just to show that it's not just I'm biased because I just like really like this because I relate to it. Obviously, she's way older than me, so her life experience has been very, very different. I don't really relate to her drive to like create art. I think that it was very interesting to learn about and it's a worthy pursuit for sure, but it's just not relatable to me. And we learn about some of her kind of spiritual beliefs as well. And personally, I don't relate to any of those either. So while there were a lot of things that I found emotionally resonated with me, there was also a lot that I was just like learning about her and consuming and didn't like personally align with. A big thing to note is that she decided, either herself or maybe because of like contract or NDAs that she has, I don't know, she decided to not detail any of her relationship with John Mulaney, which I actually think is great, because unfortunately that is going to be what most people might know her for. And I think, why waste this opportunity to write about your story and your life on something like her failed marriage that most people already know about anyway? I would find that to be the least interesting thing that I think she could write about. So I really respect and actually like that decision. Not everybody did, apparently, but we're going to talk about that. So overall, I just thought that it was a very solid memoir, especially considering that it's from a person so young. And that being said, in my pursuit to kind of hear what other people are saying about it, I'm just encountering some takes that I really, really don't like, and I take a little bit of an issue with. So even though I'm a hater and I usually sit here criticizing a book, that's most of what my channel has been up to this point, I actually, in this video, am mainly criticizing the critiques that I'm seeing. I'm going to be responding for the first time. This is the first video where I've done this. I'm going to be responding to a small-ish TikTok creator's video about this. I don't mean this in any way to be hate towards her or to call her out specifically. This is just a really good video to sum up the points of discussion that I'm seeing about this book that I just really take issue with. But it's absolutely no hate to her. She's allowed to have her own opinion, absolutely. Making criticisms of a book is something that I encourage. I know there are people in the book space who don't want to do that. I'm not a fan of that. I think that it's important to critique things, but I also think that it's important to evaluate where our own biases are affecting the way that we critique things. And I feel like I'm seeing that quite a bit with Anna's memoir. If you dislike this book as well, that is completely fine. I'd love to know your own thoughts about why you feel that way. This is a place really just for healthy discussion. If you have read this or if you want to read this, I'd love to hear from you. Without further ado, let's watch this video.
As someone who enjoys a good memoir, I think there are two types of memoirs that people tend to really like. One of which is celebrity memoirs, memoirs from people who lead interesting lives. We'll maybe work with a writer or we'll spend time writing about their experiences, and it doesn't really matter what the quality of the writing is because you just want to get the tea. You just want to know about their interpersonal relationships and their lives. The second is professional writers who know and understand the ethics around like memoir writing, who maybe have an experience that is relatable to the masses. It's just really well written.
So immediately, I take issue with this notion that there are only two types of successful memoir. Maybe this is just a generalization on her part, and that's totally fine. But I do not like that idea even to begin with. I have read so many different memoirs. I think that there are successful memoirs that are just a regular person recounting all the things about their life in their old age, and a celebrity recounting all the things about their life in their old age. I think that that can be successful in and of itself. I also think that there can be just a normal everyday person who has a significant experience and then shares their story, and that can be successful in the same way that a lot of celebrities have an angle or a specific thing or experience that they want to talk about, and then they write a memoir specifically more about that. That can also be successful. There are also grief memoirs. That is a huge thing. I've read a couple of them this year. And actually, to note, just last month, I read one that I really did not like. I found some of the things that this author put in it and kind of the way that she talked about it very off-putting for me. But if you go back and watch my reading wrap up, I make a point to, put respect on her name though. Like, there might be things that I take issue with in the way that she wrote about it. I might have felt a little bit icked by some of the way that she wrote about other women in this book. But at the end of the day, I always want to come into a memoir in the headspace of like, this is a real person writing a real story. This is something that really happened to them. These are real emotions that they're experiencing, or traumatic events that have happened to them. I think it's so important, specifically with memoirs, to come into it with that framework, because really they all deserve a certain level of respect because of that. It's somebody being vulnerable and sharing their story. So I also don't like this idea that like, oh, if I read a celebrity memoir, like I'm just trying to get the tea and like, ugh, like just give me the tea already. I just don't like that. And again, I'm not saying that that's what this creator specifically is trying to convey, but I just personally don't want to participate in that. I think that, and not to like sit on my high horse, but like, I just truly believe like all stories are valuable, and I don't want to be so reductive to minimize this person just because like I want the goss, you know?
And unfortunately, after reading Anna Maria Tendler's book over the last 2 days, I really don't think that it falls in either category.
So? That's my question. So what? Just because it doesn't fall into one of the two categories that you just stated means it's like not good or not worthwhile? Like, I'm rejecting this notion already that because this book didn't fit into one of these prepackaged ideas of what this memoir was going to be, that means it's bad. Like, that's not true. I just don't find that to be true. I felt like she was hitting a lot of really important emotional beats that was revealing emotional truths about mental health, about patriarchy, and I think that those are important discussions to have.
This book alternates between the past and present, the past being Anna spending about 2 weeks in a psychiatric facility that she voluntarily admits herself into because she's dealing with anxiety, depression, disordered eating, and cutting. And in the past, she focuses on the interpersonal relationships she has with men who shape her current fear and mistrust and anxiety around them. This book reminded me a lot of Jeanette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mother Died, in the sense that...
I'm going to let her in the sense in a second. I just want to say, to note, I did not see any parallels between these two books. Just because they are both written by young women does not mean that they are parallel in any way, shape, or form. These are two young women who have vastly different life experiences, a vastly different story to tell, a vastly different target audience. I already, again, it's like my alarm bells are going off. Like, why are we comparing? Why are we comparing? But I'm going to let her in the sense, I'm going to hear her out.
In the sense that Anna writes with a very detached quality. She's very clinical, explains like down to the minute details of what's going on in the psychiatric facility. And I can't tell if that's because of her anxious tendency and need to be very perfectionistic, to write everything down, or if it's because she's just trying to fill the page.
I understand that she's saying that she felt like it was more specifically about the writing. Okay, I do like get that. I heard her out. However, I personally don't agree. I did not feel like Anna kind of got lost in the weeds in her own book. I did not feel like it was overly detailed. I think that she was telling a story, and I think that a lot of the details that were put into the story were there for a reason. That was my takeaway and perception of it. I actually really liked that she took the time to paint a picture of what being in this facility was like and the people that she was with. It really did create atmosphere for us. It also, again, like helped hit the emotional beats of like the connections that she forged with these women during this very short period of time. And really, like, if you think she gets lost in the details here, like, you would hate Nabokov's Speak Memory. And that's like heralded as like the greatest memoir of all time. So again, this is like, it's just so subjective, you know? He's like the father of the modern memoir or whatever. And his memoir was like all details. I also just have to say, again, and maybe it's just I don't like the language that this creator is using, and that's, you know, that's just my initial reaction to it, but I do not feel like she was just trying to fill the page, you know? I think, like, this is her story, and, like, if she wants to include certain details, like, freaking let her, dude. Like, I don't know. Like, I did not find it exhaustive at all, and so maybe the question should be, oh, why did she think to include this anecdote or tell this story this way? Not like criticize her for including too many details, you know? And I'm speaking a little facetiously. I understand maybe I'm being a little confrontational, but yeah, I don't know. I just feel like that's really negative language to use. Like, oh, she's just trying to fill the page. Like that's, I don't know. It kind of bugs me. Maybe it's not super interesting as an outsider to read about her different friends in this facility asking her to like take the plants and then reading later what happens to the plants and everything. But like it's conveying an emotional truth for a reason. And that's part of why you should be reading this book then, right? Like, is it not to like empathize with the person who wrote this story? Like, I feel like that's why I read memoirs. I want to feel along with the person that I'm reading about. And I feel like I really did with this memoir.
I do think Jeanette McCurdy wrote her memoir from a place of still being traumatized. I think she has a level of reflection in the anecdotes that she provides that shows how she is complicit in some of her own behaviors. She gives us a painful insight into her experiences working with Nickelodeon and her eating disorder.
That might be true. You know, maybe Jeanette had a lot of insight into her time at Nickelodeon because that's her experience. I read Jeanette's memoir just for reference. Like, I do know the book that she's referencing. Obviously, who freaking hasn't read that book, to be honest? And it was good. But why are we comparing these two things? Again, vastly different in concept and execution and identity. Like, they're very, very different books. So why are we comparing these two women just like unnecessarily? Like, I just don't vibe with that.
With Anna, there seems to be a disconnect with the material.
I also just have to push back against this notion that there wasn't any form of like self-reflection from Anna. I think that is very untrue and just something I don't really feel like you can say about a person, even just from like reading their memoir. I think that there were a lot of times that Anna recognized that a behavior that she was engaging with was unhealthy, or times that she engaged more with this person who she knows is toxic because she's in a self-destructive place of mind. I feel like she said that kind of thing multiple times. Again, I just had a very, very different perception of this story.
For example, she talks about being in a relationship with a guy in high school who doesn't want to be seen with her in public and rejects her after inviting her to hang out after he's done working. There's a full chapter about that. And she doesn't mention John Mulaney once by name.
She doesn't have to. Like, really? Like, that's all I have to say. She does not have to. And it makes me sad if people are just reading this because they're looking for the tea about John Mulaney. Like, she has other worthwhile things to say other than just her failed relationship with this more known man, right? Like, isn't that kind of counterintuitive to the entire point of her memoir, kind of? Again, why are we reducing it to like, oh, we just want to know the tea? Like, we want to know the tea about her failed marriage instead of like empathizing with this woman and reading her story and taking away what we can from it.
Now, that could be because she signed an NDA. There are very strict limits around what she can say about him. To me, it feels very strange to have this be the title and the purpose of your memoir and not include anything about your husband.
She had a lot of examples in here of other abusive or toxic situations or traumatic situations with men that helped shape the way that her life is today. So I just don't understand why it was like her relationship with John Mulaney had to be in this book in order for her message to really come across. I just don't find that to be true. And I think also, like, as somebody on the outside, as a viewer of like their, you know, celebrity relationship, we can already gather that was not exactly a positive experience for her. So why would she not take this opportunity writing a book to highlight other experiences that she had that only bolster her negative view of men and her negative view of the patriarchy?
Well, she's supposedly healed at the end.
I don't know where she ever said she was healed at the end. Again, this is like a real person. This is a real human being who is only writing this not even at middle age. So I don't feel like she ever communicated that she's like all of a sudden healed from all of this. And as somebody who struggles with mental health and as somebody who's been in therapy for years and years, I'm sure she knows, just like I know as a young woman who struggles with mental health and who is also a psychology student, it is a process, right? It's a process to unpack these traumatic things that have shaped your life and maybe potentially someday heal from them. I just feel like that was not the takeaway that we were supposed to be having from like the end of this book.
She really doesn't take any accountability for the way that she plays into these harmful gender dynamics.
And this is just the cherry on top. This is really, I know that I've already been pushing back really hard against what this person had to say, and I'm sorry for that. It really is all peace and love. But this is the part that kind of made me mad, to be honest. Just the idea that her memoir is not as good because in Jeanette's memoir, she took accountability for stuff. And in Anna's experiences, she's not writing into her memoir that she's taking accountability for the way that she plays into harmful gender dynamics, bro. For real? I really don't like the very subtle victim blaming here. And this is not just from this creator. I've seen this in other spaces as well. And like, of course, because it's a memoir by a woman and the standard is extra uber high for a young woman writing a book like this, unattainably high, right? But where exactly was she supposed to be taking accountability? Was it in the situation with the guy from high school that literally just showed up at her house and like basically took advantage of her? Was she supposed to be taking accountability when she was a minor and had an inappropriate relationship with a man that was much older and should have known better? What accountability should she be taking when she finally, a couple years later, reads the report from her time at the psychiatric facility and realizes that a lot of the men doctors that she worked with have untrue information in her case file because they really didn't listen to what she had to say? Where is her accountability in that? Because I'm just not really seeing it. And again, it's like this pedestal is impossibly high for a woman, right? Because she has to somehow, in these situations where she's just the victim, take accountability? Why? Why should she have to do that? There are situations where there's just a victim and a perpetrator, and she unfortunately has been on the sucky end of a lot of these types of situations, and that's what she's writing about. That's why she feels the way that she does. So it makes me really sad to see other women kind of tearing her down for not meeting their expectations of what her book was supposed to be, and it not wrapping up in this tidy, feminine bow where like she did all the right things but apologized for the things that she needed to. Like I'm really seeing a disconnect here because I just did not feel that way at all. I don't think we should be comparing women to other women. I don't think we should be holding women to a standard that is impossible for any human being to fulfill. It is possible for somebody to just be taken advantage of, to be unheard, to be invalidated, and they don't have to apologize for that happening to them. And it's not even like she's always like men bad, women good in this book either. She talks about how her male doctors helped her get out of an unhealthy situation with a woman therapist. And then she also shouts out at the end her now therapist, who is a man, who disagreed with some of those weird inconsistencies that they found in the reports and a weird diagnosis that she got. I just feel like we could progress so much in these kinds of spaces if we let go of some of these like biases and not try to shove people into these specific boxes and then say that something was bad just because it doesn't fit into our preconceived notions and expectations. It's just really disappointing for me. I think that it's important to let people, and especially women, tell their stories the way that they want to tell them. And you, as an observer, can criticize something, but you need to evaluate whether your criticisms are just coming from a place of bias. And also, at the end of the day, after consuming something, just take whatever emotional truths that you can. Just empathize wherever you can. You will be better off for it. I personally want to learn about other people and want to learn about the way that other people think. And I'm not saying that I'm better for that. I'm not saying that any of these criticisms are necessarily wrong, but it's just very interesting to me how my perception after reading this can be so very different. Again, I do not mean in any way to be dogpiling on this one creator. Like I said, this video specifically, it was kind of a culmination of a bunch of different things that I have seen said about this book, about her not including John Mulaney, about her, just dogging on men, kind of this like very subtle victim blaming. Like I've seen that in multiple places and it just makes me really sad. But At the end of the day, it truly is all peace and love. These are just my thoughts and some of the things that were rubbing me the wrong way with the discourse about this book in particular. Please let me know what you think. The point of my channel, why I wanted to start a booktube, is really just to facilitate these types of discussions because I find it very interesting. Reading is my main hobby and I'm very opinionated and I want to either have respectful discourse with somebody that I disagree with or I want to find other people that resonate with my opinions. So please leave me your thoughts below, or if you want to, you can find my Instagram in the description. I am much more encouraged to be active on there if people are interacting with me in my DMs or whatever. It's open. I want to hear from you. If you stuck with me here this long, love you. Thank you. I'll hopefully see you next time. Like, subscribe, do whatever. I think that's it. Bye.